good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and however you are listening to this episode, it's great to have you here. On this episode, we are talking about the idea of tame and wicked problems. This is a frame of reference that says there are things that we have tamed and thus have the template for, and that there are things that are wicked and no one has the answer to. And this is a growing reality for leaders in a world that continues to move at an unrelenting pace. On this episode, I have the great and powerful Kevin Green and the insightful and tenacious Stu Trevina. We spend some 30 minutes talking through some of our thoughts on the topic. On that note, enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Leadership Bites with your host Guy Bloom, a leadership podcast, conversations, just me talking and occasional interviews. Check us out at livingbrave.com, and when you enjoy the episode, subscribe and tell everyone. Hey, so welcome back, you crazy kids.
Thank you.
So we are looking at this idea of what it is to lead in tame and wicked times. And this comes from the work of Rittel and Weber, who back in 1973 proposed this idea that problems can be broken into, in essence, two component parts, which is one is the tame, and these are the problems that you've dealt with before, you've solved before. Either you know what the answer is or the component parts of it are, and if you work with a team, then between you and them having solved things previously, the answer will come out of that shared wisdom. And a wicked problem is the counter opposite to that, which is I don't know and you don't know, not so much how to approach solving it, but we've never been here before. So the answer is not apparent. It's a unique problem. And in essence, it means that there's no clear definition or methodology to just dealing with it. If that's our starting point about tame and wicked problems, then what does it mean right now, today, leading in that context? And I think it's come to fruition, because if ever there were complex times and ever there were a whole set of realities that are challenging leaders, then it feels as if we're slap bang in the middle of it. So I'll pose that question. What is it like to lead in tame and wicked times?
I think right now we are in wicked times based on that definition. And I think we're starting to see leaders that are almost raising to it, and those that might not be quite so much. I've been thinking about this ahead of this kind of chat. I think there's a few different things I've thought of. There's something here, I think, about an ability to emotionally connect people towards a cause. So it might not be towards a solution or an outcome or an end game, but at least doing something on a level to feel that people are connected towards something, either a way of thinking or a way of kind of behaving. I think I said when we spoke before, I'm cautious about how much stuff I'm kind of watching in the media about what's going on around us. There's a guy that's really stood out recently for me, which is Rishi Sunak, who's the Chancellor. Have you seen him when he's been alongside Boris Johnson and he's addressed the press? It's just kind of choice of language. Have you seen any of his speeches recently?
Seen him once or twice, Stu, yeah.
I think he's articulating the ask of the people towards something, and it's not that they know the answer right now, but it's a realisation that we all need to be doing something together to at least get us over this kind of current climate that we're in. And his big thing is around helping each other. When there was the first announcement, there was a request for us to start. It wasn't enforced, but it was a request for us to start kind of keeping our distance. Boris Johnson's very, very kind of matter of fact. And Rishi Sunak gave a kind of speech talking about what he was going to do for the economy. But he finished with a piece around, and I've got it written down here because I've been talking about this a few times recently, but he finished with a line on here about, we want to look back on this time and remember how in the face of a generation-defining moment, we undertook a collective national effort and we stood together. It's on all of us. And I found it was a really powerful speech that was kind of given, but I think what I've seen quite a lot of post that are people citing him to be the next Prime Minister, or he's the one that could step up into that space. And again, he hasn't given the answer. He hasn't said this is how we're going to resolve it. But there is that almost rallying kind of call to action that's done on an emotional level to pull people in.
So is what you're picking up, Stu, that the way he's conducting himself now, his rallying cries is forming a sense of we're in this together, and that's the action that he's taking, that's seeking to tame something wicked?
For me, that would be a message that would be almost the Prime Minister's message to be given. So this guy's the Chancellor dealing with, the financial side of the running of the country. But he's almost, as well as the task of what needs to be done, he's going that extra way of pulling people together. And I think he recognises there's probably a lot of fear, uncertainty. He's probably seeing some behaviours that maybe we're not particularly proud of that this kind of environment's bringing out. And I think he's almost addressing that side on an emotional level. So I guess you could, you might say he's kind of really emotionally intelligent, knowing there's a population that need a bit of guidance or a bit of kind of pulling towards something.
I have another perspective. Well, because it's a biggie, right?
Yeah.
It's a big deal. I had a thought this morning. Alongside the Chancellor, Boris Johnson is communicating regularly, which helps to make the wicked stuff tamer. But I noticed that if we'd have gone full on lockdown, I don't think the country would have coped with that. Look how the first mention of restrictions caused everybody to start panic buying. Imagine if the first step in our attempts to tame this complex thing was to go to the situation we are in now. Maybe you'd have had unrest in the streets because people just can't cope with a big change all at once. And so whilst the government was facing criticism around why aren't you closing the schools earlier, they came out with a reasonable explanation as to why we don't need to close the schools now, and then we close the schools. And I'd like to think that they have employed at some point of this cycle some kind of behavioural scientist, some psychology teams that told the government, in your attempts to tame something wicked which we've never faced before, do it step by step, not in large chunks. And that allows people to get used to some stuff before we go full in. There's that pause again.
Picking up on that, there's something here about how people react to, if we take a step back, how people react to the reality of not having an answer. And that is something that I think is quite key in terms of the way an individual or a collective, a team or an organisation faces into not knowing, and the reaction, emotional reaction that can have at an individual level and then at a collective level. So I think that's one component. What is the reality of feeling as if I don't know where this train is going? I'm on board it, but I don't know almost which destination it's going to land at. There's that reaction. And then I think there's if once I recognise that and I have to navigate the insecurities, uncertainties, doubts, anxieties of myself with everybody else's, then how might I approach, or how might we counsel others to actually navigate the unknown? And I think those are two interesting factors. How do I feel as I approach or find I'm in a space where I don't have the answer? And then how do I or others navigate that, realising that maybe the only clarity we've got is our methodology rather than the clarity of knowing where we're actually heading to? Those are two interesting component parts for me, I think. So for me, that first bit of focus is, what do we see in people as they approach, especially people that maybe are of an age where they've been in control for a long time. They've dealt with things that are very organisationally specific, they're very people specific, and there's been no real pull on them to behave in a social context other than the general stuff of treat people with respect, which is easy. I don't say that as a throwaway statement. I mean, I have some organisations I'm dealing with in the construction industry, and if we shut these sites, it may fundamentally damage our organisation. But how can we ask people to go to work in this current context? And that's a wicked problem for them. And it's the emotional reaction of the people that want to contribute but may have to be told, well, you can't because you need to stay away. The people that go into a self-protection mode, well, I'm not coming in, I don't care what happens to the business, etc., etc. So I'm interested in that emotional reaction to the unknown. So maybe we just start on that, because I think that's what Wicked does. It creates an emotional response. What do you think?
I think it forces leaders to think in both the short, medium and long-term future. So in Tame Times, times. Maybe you only have to consider at the top of an organisation, what are your medium to long-term strategies and plans? But now we've got something arrived that's going to cause me to think about my short-term needs for this business and the people, and the medium and long-term longevity of this organisational health. So you know that Wetherspoon's founder, Tim somebody, I understand why, because of his demeanour, he might have come in for some criticism recently. I see him trying to look after his people in the short term along the lines of, you're probably on low pay. If you're serving behind one of our bars, you can take the 80% wage cushion from the government, or if you need to go away and earn more than that, there's loads of jobs at Tesco's right now. Go grab one of them before they run out, and then medium to long term, you will experience preferential treatment when you seek to rejoin us. So I don't know whether or not I'm in support of him, but I've seen some quite critical stuff around him. But I would like to toss it in there that he's been forced to think short, medium and long term all at the same time, because the problem is wicked, and I'm okay with the way he's doing it.
Just to take both those back then, so I think what we said is in these wicked times we're going to get various different emotional responses. I think, Guy, you listed a couple: those that want to contribute, those that want to go into self-protection, whatever it might be. And so are we saying then that part of the role of the leader is to have whether appreciation is the right word, but an understanding that those around them are responding differently, and I need to calibrate myself, be self-aware to factor in those differences of those that are following me. And potentially, with the guy at Wetherspoons, he hasn't done that. Is that maybe what's kind of happening there?
You're talking about Tim Martin, and
that's right.
So what you've said there about that emotional intelligence, the capacity to factor in the needs of others, I mean, that's inherently true. And I think what happens is, in this wicked context, is that it becomes magnified. So the expectation is, of course, that in general times we have managers who have senior roles, and leadership is expected in the context of the role that they inhabit, and all those things are true. So when we get to a place of conflict and we feel that emotional resilience, and we spoke about resilience on another podcast, but when we feel that stability threatened, we look to leaders. So what happens is the leadership position becomes greatly magnified, and when we have leaders that maybe are reacting by trying to offer solutions and answers, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, the level of scrutiny on their vocabulary, their tone, their delivery medium, for example, they sent out an email, why didn't they turn up, or they could have used video and made it more personal. The point is, now everybody's a critic. We've got this concept of wicked times, and then we have the reality of wicked times in this current social media. Everything's scrutinized, everybody has an opinion, and everybody can verbalize it. So there is an element of, unless it's fundamentally perfect in its delivery, somebody's going to take umbrage with it. But I think there's also something here that says it does highlight those leaders who have possibly reacted from a position of status quo, i.e., let me put out a message, let me just give an output, and they haven't really factored in the way that will be interpreted with the fears that people have and the humanity that is going on from a place of genuine fear, rather than the one of the protected space of, well, you're probably quite well off, my friend, and you're probably not one salary away from Armageddon in terms of my life. So I think these wicked situations feel different, and they're magnified greatly dependent on your social context. And as a leader, everything that you say is under this massive amount of scrutiny, because at this point our expectation is, well, lead then.
Yeah, that's a good shout. I wrote down a couple of things, what I thought it meant to be a leader in these times. One of the things I came to was about being decisive. And that for me isn't it's not about the right decision. It's about making and taking decision. And I think what you've just said there is true, which I think could be an inhibitor or a barrier to decisions being made. What if I do it and it's wrong? Or if I do it, how is it going to be perceived? And I guess while this is happening, am I deferring something, or am I not taking a course of action which could lead to a better outcome? And I think it's that, what's the expression, is that your bad decision is better than no decision at all, or something like that. I might have completely just made that up. Could that prevent me leaning into that space a little? That could be why we're seeing those maybe leaders that are standing up and kind of building building a reputation and those that are maybe we're waiting to see something from, and that could be the dialogue that they're having.
Well, there was that World Health Organization Executive Director, Dr. Michael Ryan. I reshared somebody else's LinkedIn post about that, and I thought was absolutely outstanding.
Is that the guy that dealt with Ebola?
Yes.
He was kind of, phenomenal.
Yeah, and he basically said perfection is the enemy of the good. And I was really interested by that. He was really saying to the world, and as a leader watching that, you'd be saying, right, there's a lot of truth in here. He's saying you can't wait. You have to act. You have to make decisions. And of course, what comes with acting at pace is it won't be perfect. And as an observer, it's easy to look at a decision that's been made at pace and see the problem with it. But you're not the one that had to make the decision. And I think that's the real maturity of the leader to say, biggest mistake I can make in a wicked context is not to make a decision.
Yeah.
Now, that decision might be to do nothing. That is my decision. All the way through to, this is what we're going to do. We're going to paint the car park green. It doesn't matter what it is, but here is my decision. Because actually the issue is in not doing so, and that paralysis that can come from it. And I think what's interesting is there's an extra bravery in Wicked Times, which is the ability to have enough personal resilience and enough strength of character to say, hey, there might be learnings from me at the end of this, and I'm sure there will be correct ways of seeking counsel and making decisions at pace. There are methodologies to do that. But at the same time, we, I think, as observers, often need to hold off on holding people to a level of decision making in these moments that is unreasonable because they're being asked to literally fix a car while it's driving.
So to Stu's point around inaction is far worse than taking any wrong action, and in the spirit of what you just described around the World Health Organization, man, take action, make some decisions, act fast in times of wicked problems, but then I would suggest that you need to install some very short-term repetitive feedback loops so that you know at each step of the way is the action that you are taking us in the right way.
Yeah. And I think that's what it is, isn't it? It's constant calibration. And this leads you very, very quickly to that space of what's the culture you've got. And historically, if you are running an organization where you are the autocratic leader and challenge or curiosity or not having exactly the right answer is penalized, well, I reckon you'll be reaping the repercussions of that. I always allude to emergency services and the military and that kind of thing, and they're not perfect organisations, but that capacity to move at pace, to deal with the thing that's in front of you, and to constantly receive and seek feedback with the intent to calibrate for the next interaction, because it might be coming in half an hour, 45 minutes, I think is indicative of learning to fail fast. And that concept is the biggest, I think, issue in Wicked Times is paralysis, not making decisions, and fearing the repercussions of judgment when this is all done, as opposed to, well, I'm making decisions in the moment and I'll live or die by those decisions, but guess what? Actually, I'd rather be judged for the decisions I made, even if they were wrong, than not actually making any.
And depending on how you approach all of that, can even make the problem appear already tame. For example, the way the government has been shaping up in and around the handling of this coronavirus pandemic, the plan is so coherent that it makes me feel that it was never wicked to start with. I don't know if that makes sense. They are dealing with it in such a seemingly coherent and strategical and calm way that they already knew the right path to tread before they started.
Well, I think that's very interesting. I mean, there's two things in that statement. One is, of course, some people will criticise the government left, right and centre for, taking too long and all these kind of things. But like we've just been saying, you're not the one in the hot seat and you're not factoring in all the realities that they're dealing with. So history will judge, but they made decisions. They made decisions not to do something. They made decisions to do something. However, what I'm hearing, and I think I really liked that phrase, that actually you can make it look like it's tame. I've never really thought about it like that,
and that makes people feel better.
Yes. If I am comfortable with not knowing the answer, maybe it's like an explorer. I don't know what I'm going to find, but I know how I'm going to find it.
And I definitely don't need my leaders appearing on television or in the conference room appearing to panic.
Yeah, and maybe that's what it is. The way we're going to get to the destination unknown is with a methodology and an approach and a mindset and a set of behaviours that we can have confidence in. And my point of reference for that is almost thinking about a captain of a boat. They're sailing in the sea, and the sea can bring whatever it brings, but actually this boat is watertight, and that means I can sail into weather unknown because actually what I have is a way of approaching that me as an individual and us as a team know what to do even in situations unknown, and that then gives me a sense of confidence. And I think that's what a lot of medical staff do, and a lot of military units do, and a lot of emergency services do. They have the stuff they've tamed, they have the stuff that's unknown and is wicked, but they have a tame way of approaching the stuff that's wicked.
Yeah.
And I think that then gives them their security.
And could I share a lesson? I'm just coming to the end of a book written by Matthew Syed called Rebel Ideas. It's about achieving diversive conversations, diversity in language, diversity thinking. And one of the chapters is dedicated to the history of the English football team, historically always doing very poorly at major championships. So they assembled a group of people after England's latest Euro failure or World Cup failure, but they did something very, very different. The natural choice was to get Gareth Southgate, the England manager, Roy Hodgson, Tony Pulis, Harry Redknapp, all in a room. But of course, you're not going to achieve any cognitive diversity there because they all know football inside out. So instead, they appointed Matthew Syed, who's like a sports psychologist, table tennis champion. They put an Olympic rower in the room. They put Sir Dave Brailsford, the fellow around the Sky cycling team, who was into incremental improvements, and Clive Woodward, World Cup winner with the rugby team. And because of that, they achieved cognitive diversity, all aimed at how do we achieve improvement in the performance of the English football team. Highly criticised in the moment, but because they knew they had to access different resources because the problem was wicked, I think the progress currently being shown by the English football team seems like it's been tamed by cognitive diversity.
I like that.
It's a lovely idea, isn't it?
It is, and it's saying, how do we run two truths at the same time? How do we hold what we know to be true, and then how do we bring in something that can shift us, calibrate us, whatever that might be, so we can approach this issue with a sense of new information and new thoughts. And of course, what that means then is that as an organisation, we have to hold true the fact that there are no sacred truths. There's what we believe to be true right now, but actually what we have to do is to say, let's live in a space where we're willing to throw away what we believe to be right every day, unless it still holds true. And I think that's something that is becoming increasingly true. If I think back to 25 years ago or whatever it was when I got into the workspace properly, things seemed pretty linear. Start working, do a few years, get a promotion, go here, there was almost a set of stepping stones. And what I really do get a sense of now is you absolutely have to operate in a space as an individual, as a team, as an organisation, and probably by the sounds of it, as a country, as a culture, is what we know to be true today may very well not be true tomorrow, and our desire to hold on to stability so we create a sense of a tempo really doesn't work for us very much. We've got to hold two truths, the stuff that is undeniably true, but also really being aware that actually how almost eager are we to look at things through a new lens. And when you build a reputation or a brand or a set of truths around you of being the person that can solve because you're the wisdom holder, we're very much shifting, I think, into a space of I may not be the wisdom holder, but I'm the wisdom creator. I'll free it, I'll find it, I'll develop it, I'll nurture it. It may not come from me.
If you only go to the brains that you're used to going to, they may not have that breadth of thinking around being able to tame something brand new because it's outside their field of expertise. So if you only go to your favourite five, then you're in trouble.
So we've just lost Stu off the call because he had to go and make a call. The needs of having to earn a living, heaven's sake. But he was just saying something before he went, Kevin, which I know you just wanted to pick up on.
So Stu wanted to wrap up in and around one of the ways that companies can face into wicked problems is to double down on your values. Absolutely examine what you stand up for and stand up for that. So for example, Brewdog, one of the things that they stand for is that commerce, organisations, business can absolutely be a force for change and change for good. So they've decided to make so much of their profit available for charitable donations. So a culture of the organisation can absolutely help you examine what you stand up for and make sure you do that in times of wicked problems.
And I can imagine with an organisation that has that inherently built into it, that it does allow the individual to operate from a place where I was just thinking about that I don't have to have the answer, I have to be the instigator of the answer, and if that environment is more geared towards that. And I think you also mentioned, just when we were offline for a few moments, that you were just noticing now that there are organisations who are gearing themselves up to create ventilators, for example, in coronavirus period. And I just highlight that because somebody might be listening to this a year or two from now. But you were just saying Dyson, and I think some of the motor manufacturers are gearing up to
for the respirators.
Exactly. And I'd be interested whether or not they're looking to, and I don't know the answer, but I'm sure it'll come out, as to whether or not they are looking to cover their cost, whether or not they're giving it as, look, we're actually not a poor company, so we're just going to do it for free. We're going to try and make money off it. That could be very interesting, because again, how altruistic is that commercial drive?
I saw an announcement a short time before we came on that said that Airbnb are going to be providing 100,000 beds for key workers. Absolutely no mention of whether or not that's free of charge, because Airbnb is a connected group of private individuals, isn't it? So yes. I wonder if those private individuals that have those beds that they rent out via Airbnb are giving them free of charge. I'd love to think that they are. But you know what you said earlier about in times of wickedness, in terms of these scenarios, I don't have to be the source of the answer. I have to be the instigator or the finder out of the
finder outer. New word. let's bail on that one and move on.
But that means you have to be demonstrating a sufficient level of humility that you are willing to go out and ask for help. If, for example, Wicked Times expose, uncover or reveal organisational culture, if traditionally your company has been led with a command and control type leader or leaders, very, very unlikely that they'd be willing to turn round and risk being seen as weak by saying, we haven't got a map for this one, we haven't faced it before, what's the answer? They would rather keep it to themselves and hope for the best, because I think anything else is seen as weakness.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the highlighting point, isn't it? I'm very interested in, there are lots of environments where I see right now a doubling down on that micromanagement, where I mentioned it in one of the other podcasts, a manufacturing organisation that I know that have turned around to their workers and said, when you are working from home, you must have your video camera on from 9 o'clock till 5, and it must be on, so we can see you in the workspace at any one point, versus other organisations that have gone, well, you're paid to do a job, crack on.
As in, please accept this as a message that we do not trust you.
Yes. Please accept it as a message we do, please accept it as a message we don't. And it's fascinating, isn't it, that kind of environment where actually when this company gets into what might be hard times, how do we think we're going to solve it? With the stuff that we've always done before, or with innovation and maybe the crazy idea and something that might be a little bit challenging and something that might redefine what we're about, and actually who's going to offer that? And more importantly, even if I have the personal wherewithal to offer it, how's it going to be received? Who's going to be the negator of an idea that actually was the answer? And I was just thinking, actually, while we just went offline for a moment, of one of the exercises that you and I do, and with 3 balls. And you know that exercise where they pass the balls around in a certain way, and the answer to the whole thing is, it starts off where a team of 10 might take 90 seconds to pass the balls around in a certain method that we've set out, but when we give them the rules, they have to do it quicker. And the answer, it can be done in under a second. And what's interesting is, I've been doing that for, 15, 20 years, that exercise, and the only way you can solve it, unless just somebody has an epiphany and just gets it, which is, well, I've seen that happen, I think, twice in 20 years, the only way that can basically be solved is to try it, but also the welcoming of the ridiculous.
Yeah.
Where somebody may go, I think we should hold our hands like this, and somebody else goes, I think the ball should be driven across our backs, or whatever it might be. But actually, when they all line up in a certain way, and it's quite obviously not going to work, they almost have to do that to then eliminate it, to then do it better.
Sorry, so that's a willingness to be courageously diverse. Anything's up for grabs at the moment. Let's fail fast in order to move forward.
And what you notice is, if there's somebody in the room who says, oh, well, that just won't work, or, well, there's no way that'll work, or, oh, I can't see how that would give the answer, they don't just affect it, they infect it, dependent on their influence. And if their influence is significant, or they have positional power, and they say it, then actually what can happen happen is very quickly the room doesn't try it because the power that's in the room has negated the idea of it, let alone the trialing of it. So it's not just the way in which something offered, by definition it's the way it's received. And I think one of the biggest learnings that can come out of this is how organisations have received or have missed messaging from people that probably do have the answer, but actually in that fear of doing something that might not seem to be in control, it's being negated or not listened to.
Yeah.
And I think that'll be quite fascinating when all this is done, to see the organisations or the teams that have found their way of approaching these things through that lens of, once we get going, but until then, does anybody know what to do?
Yeah, because no one's got the map. We are writing the map now.
As a summary for leading in Tame and Wicked Times, I've got this quasi-conclusion in my mind that says it's not about having the answer, it's about being the conduit for the answer. And that might be through the environment, the culture, the willingness to hear and listen to people, and to create an emotional safety, which we often talk about, and a willingness to contribute into a space where it is understood that the answer may sit in a microcosm of what I've said, rather than it be right.
Good. My own frame around that would be, I think we've agreed as a result of this conversation, the importance to take action.
Yeah.
And then the importance to get lots of feedback in short term to any kind of positive feedback that you're treading the right path or indeed the wrong path, so that you can quickly change direction and course correct.
Yeah.
And also to take care around how you look and appear in front of your troops, because nobody wants to see anybody flapping during these times.
It just reminded me you say that. Somebody once said to me when I was about to say something, I said, "Oh no, I don't want to say it. It's stupid." I was quite young at the time, and he went, "Guy, can I just be absolutely clear?" He said, "Your stupid idea is way better than everybody else's no idea."
Yes.
And I think that allowed me to offer that idea into the room, and retrospectively, I think maybe that's what it is. In Wicked Times, your stupid idea is better than everybody else's no idea. And maybe that's the conclusion.
And you and I and Stu will talk often about leadership of self. That's behavioural. It doesn't need a job title. So if you are front-facing, if you are customer-facing at one of these organisations, and you have an idea as to what will help us, you have a duty to speak up. You have a duty to make your voice as loud as appropriate, in the name of helping us out.
Yeah, we can say that duty, and that's absolutely right. But if I fear, or there's an environment that punishes anything other than the right answer, that duty is negated. And that's, I think, then what attacks people's resilience, and that's what turns people inward on themselves, because actually you're not allowing me not to be right, but to contribute. And I think that's what people want to do, allow me to contribute, even if it's with something that is only a small component part of the answer.
Agree.
Okay, so on that note, we'll sign off, and still have to find out what we said by listening to the podcast.
Which is a nice way to find out.
Exactly. And we'll speak again on the next one.
Very good. Thank you, Guy. Enjoyed that.
Yeah, me too. Speak to you soon.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
That's it. Subscribe so you keep updated on new episodes. Visit livingbrave.com if you want to connect with us and find out more. This has been Leadership Bites. See you soon.